Good evening. Okay, I'm an elementary school teacher. If you don't respond, I'll sing. Good evening. It was smart. You must have heard my singing before. Everybody got right on page. Certainly, I'm M. Christopher Brown II, and we wish to welcome you to Kentucky State University. I have the august privilege of serving as the 18th president. We see so many elected officials who are here, and I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge them. I don't see all of you in the room because I have hit that age now where I've been prescribed glasses. And so I picked my glasses up on Friday, so you are safe for me today because I can't see you. But if you're in the front, I can see you. So first, one of our favorite alums and our mayor. So would the mayor and any members of city or county council or county executive board please stand just so we can acknowledge you. Mayor May, John Sauer, so many of you. Thank you. It is always a privilege to be selected to serve your state or Commonwealth in any era, and certainly those of us who are serving now under Governor Bevin. There are so many. One, a good colleague who I saw slip in earlier, Commissioner, and then we saw Education. I'm not sure if I saw Workforce, but Wayne Lewis and others who are serving the administration under Governor Bevin. Would his representatives please stand? Thank you. Thank you. There are many alumni here, as well as faculty, staff, and especially our Frankfort community. Our town-gown relations are extremely strong. I know I saw the Chamber and our Tourism Commission, and certainly we acknowledge all of you for this listening tour. It is a privilege for me as president to have the former interim president on campus. Many times when there's leadership and presidential transition, there's tension and there's animus, but President Thompson and I have been colleagues since day one. Even before I was president, I flew in, spent the day. He loves Sage restaurant. We had Sage today in the office. And so he taught me a lot about the campus and made my transition extremely easy. To do him justice, I would like to defer to the chair of our Board of Regents, who's also an EKU alum, for the introduction of our speaker on this evening, and that's Dr. Elaine Ferris, Chair of the Board of Regents at Kentucky State University.
Good evening. I am moving a little slow today. I am on the other end of having some surgery a few weeks ago. So excuse me if I'm moving slow, and I'm healing quickly, so I'll be dunking the basketball in a few more weeks. Dr. Thompson, of course, needs no introduction in the state of Kentucky. So I am going to just give you some highlights of his professional career. Dr. Thompson is a nationally recognized leader in higher education with a focus on policy, student success, and organization leadership and design. Thompson began his tenure as Executive Vice President and Chief Academic Officer at the Kentucky Council on Postsecondary Education in 2009 after leaving Eastern Kentucky University, where he held a variety of leadership positions, including Associate Vice President for Academic Affairs and University Programs. In May 2016, Dr. Thompson was granted leave by the Council to serve as interim president of Kentucky State University and returned to CPE in 2017. Dr. Thompson was named president of the Kentucky Council on Postsecondary Education in October 2018, following the retirement of Robert L. King. President Thompson's leadership experience spans 27 years across higher education, business, and numerous nonprofit boards. Dr. Thompson has researched, taught, and consulted in areas of diversity, leadership, ethics, multicultural families, race and ethnic relationships, student success, first-year students, retention, cultural competence, and organizational design throughout his career. As a highly sought-after national speaker, Dr. Thompson has presented over more than 800 workshops, seminars, and invited lectures in diverse areas and topics including education, organizational culture, and leadership. President Thompson continues to serve as a consultant to educational entities, corporations, nonprofit organizations, police departments, and other governmental entities. Dr. Thompson has published more than 30 publications, numerous research and peer-reviewed presentations, and has authored and co-authored many, many books. Aaron's claim to fame, or maybe it's my claim to fame, is that we were both freshmen at EKU in 1973. Of course, I look much younger than him. Please join me in welcoming the president of the Kentucky Council on Post-Secondary Education, Dr. Aaron Thompson.
Well, without a doubt, you look a lot better than me, a lot younger, clearly more talented. Dr. Elaine Ferris, let's give her a hand. You know. It absolutely is great being back on campus. I consider this my home still, and President Brown's absolutely correct. He and I, from the very first day I met him, the transition was easy. You've got a great president. This is a great campus. This is a great community, and I love you all. So good to be back. There's a few people here I would be remiss if I didn't introduce. One is, if I didn't, I would be fired, is the chair of my board, Cheryl Zimmerman. Good to see you, Cheryl. Cheryl's a wonderful chair. And I like her a whole lot because she selected me as president. So, yeah. Gene Hutchins, who's the head of KIA. I see Bridget Ramsey, Pritchard Committee. And I want all of my staff to stand up, the CPE people who have to do all the things they need to do to make sure I stay out of trouble. So it's good to have them here. You know, there are many things that I have to tell you that we can talk about. And one of the things I'm not going to do tonight, for those that don't know me, think that I probably will, and that is to talk a lot. Because this is a listening tour, and I've been around the state many places so far, and I plan on going to a lot more before the year is over to really hear what the community, what students, both P-12 as well as higher ed students, are telling us about higher education and what we can do to improve higher education. You know, one of the things that I will tell you that you know very well, that higher education has taken a beating over the last many years. You know, it's like 50% of the population believe that we're not important. And that's problematic at so many levels. Being the head of higher ed for Kentucky, I think I'm called to actually take this head on and talk about really the value of higher education. And I can give you all the data, but you know the data. You know that you cannot actually have a vibrant economy without a vibrant higher ed system. Dr. Lewis, you can't have a vibrant economy without a vibrant P-12 system. One of the things that we have failed to do, I think, as educational leaders, is to do our job in letting people know how valuable we really are. And truly, you also know the economic value of higher education, that with a post-secondary credential that matters, you actually make good money. With a post-secondary credential that matters, your kids will have a better life. With a good post-secondary credential, you'll be able to even pay off your student debt, students. The idea that we need to do a much better job of talking about the value of higher education. So what I've been doing is going around the state talking about putting value back into the value proposition of higher education, to somehow align ourselves with a more complete agenda that allows us to be able to talk to anyone, whether they're a 7th grade student or someone who's an employer talking about what we are bringing to the table and the value of us bringing it to the table. Once again, you know this. You know that during the economic downturn of 2008 and 9 and on, those people that actually were unemployed were those with a high school diploma or below. You know that the majority of people in prison aren't educated. You know that the majority of people that are on Medicaid are not educated. So what we've done in this state, and I am not shy about saying this, is that somehow we've put ourselves in a position where we're funding a lot of the issues that a good higher education system, a good P-12 system can actually solve. We need to be actually funding the solution. And so my job, more than anything else, and I'm very privileged to have it, is to go around talking to folk about what we can do to come together as a system, as a community, to talk together about how we can make sure that everybody knows that a post-secondary credential that matters is exactly the way we need to go in Kentucky, and we need to be figuring out how to fund it and not on the backs of the students and their families. That's what we're talking about. And I'm going to give you a chance to ask me questions, for sure in great detail, but I do want to tell you that I have 5 big items, priorities, that connect us with our goal of having 60% of our population with some post-secondary credential by 2030, and that our strategic agenda aligns with that, but we got 5 big priorities that we're going to concentrate on in the tenure I am at CPE. And I will also tell you this, from my position, you know, I tell people that I'm here to inspire. Really where the rubber meets the road is at places like KSU. And let me be clear, this state would not do well to not have a KSU. This nation would not do well to not have a KSU. KSU matters. But we would not do well if we cannot figure out how we can work together to make sure that everything matters, including KSU. We've got to do a better job of getting more people in higher ed. We have about 53.3% of the population in Kentucky that are graduating from high school going to college. That's way too low, way too low. Even though it's a little bit higher in Franklin County, it's still not high enough. We are not completing enough. We have to get more people through at a faster rate. We have to get more people in state even that would become a part of a higher ed system that will stay in state to add to the economic development. We have to get more adult learners back engaged in higher education. We need all of these things in order to reach this goal that we have set by 2030. And once again, this goal is correlated with having a strong economic development system in the state. Now, let me be clear. I don't believe everybody needs a 4-year degree, but I do believe everybody needs a post-secondary credential, without a doubt. And so this conversation is about both and. We do need more people with a credential that will fulfill our middle skill jobs that we have. We do need that, but we also need more baccalaureate and advanced degrees to actually build jobs that have not yet been thought about. So this is about us coming together to talk about how all of higher education has value, and about giving us some talking points about how we let everybody within our community know. We've got to build the community in such a way that, Roger, that they understand the value of teaching, they understand the value of learning, and they understand the value that we can't leave anybody behind in that process. So you'll see in my 5 big goals, we're not shy about talking about we have to do a better job of closing gaps, but not just gaps, squeezing them, about bringing everybody up. We've got to talk about equity that goes beyond just the gap closing, but making sure that we're providing, Dr. Lewis, the best teachers in all of our schools, that can help students to learn, to move from the teaching paradigm to the learning paradigm is what I call it. We've got to connect employers on the front end of this agenda, not just use our career services to get them to come in and so they can be interviewed and possibly not get the job, but how employers can come in on the front end to help us to build programs that they need and then ask them for the dedication to hire our students. We've got to make sure that you charge people like Dr. Wayne Lewis and Aaron Thompson with combining our resources and efforts to create a P20 system that matters, that we don't leave anybody behind, that we help P12 make sure that they do all that they can to make sure that all of our students are post-secondary ready. And that in post-secondary, we give them an opportunity to actually succeed. And so there's a lot of the conversations that we're going to have. Around the state, people are talking to me that they're worried about affordability, that they're worried about whether or not they can go to school. Families are saying they worry about whether or not they can provide their students with that next dream. And so I tell people when I talk about this, affordability is an issue, but I want to be clear from my viewpoint what the issue is. There's a perception of affordability and there is the reality of affordability. When we're talking to students and parents and other folk, when I ask them, are you going to college? And many are saying, I don't think I can because I can't afford to. What do you mean? Well, I don't think I can. I don't think I can pay for the tuition. So there's a perception of affordability because many students, Gene, aren't getting all the knowledge that we're working with KID to try to give them to make sure that they know how to go to college and get the money that they need to go to college. But we also have to do a better job, President Brown, of advertising the net price, not the sticker price. Nobody pays the sticker price in this state. But we don't know that. So we've got to do a better job. But there's also an access issue in the reality of affordability. That is that many of our students, although they may get enough money to pay for tuition, books, and so on, they don't have enough money to live in many ways. We still have food insecurity. We still have many students living in their cars. We still have many students having to help their parents survive. We still have students and other things. So there is a reality of affordability on the access end. But there's also the thing that we're seeing the most in Kentucky, there's an issue of affordability about getting people through. There are more people that are dropping out of school now because they just can't afford to go. So it's a completion issue. UK did this big study to show that there was a threshold among their students, if they owed $5,000 or more, they would drop out. So we're working on figuring out how we can do a better job as a post-secondary system to help them to get through. And there's a variety of solutions to that. But I'm not here to give you all that speech. I'm here to listen to you. So there's many of the things in the big 5 items we're talking about that you'll hear a little bit more about as we go along these many years. But with that in mind, I want to kind of tell you who we are. Who knows what CPE is? Some of you, right? So what is that? You know? Council on Post-Secondary Education was created in 1997 in the Post-Secondary Reform Act. We had an old Council of Higher Education, but the CPE was developed, and we're kind of a hybrid. We are a coordinating board, but we have governing powers, some governing powers. You know, we set the tuition, we set the funding mechanism, performance funding, some of you have heard about that. I mean, there's a lot of things that we do, programs. So we were created in 1997 along with the Kentucky Community and Technical College. So since then, we've had 4 presidents, I'm the 4th. And over the years, we've worked well with setting the agenda for the state that many of our campuses have in fact bought into. And I just want to tell you, until 2009, we actually had, our metrics were showing the fastest and best growth in the nation. Did you know that? But we were getting funding. Since 2009, we still have been growing. Our campuses have become more efficient, but 11 years of cut has taken a toll. But even with our post-secondary accountability report that just came out, we still are kicking butt. That's my academic phrase, by the way, in case you don't know. But we have slowed down the progress, and we've got to get better. So the CPE then is the coordinating board over higher ed for Kentucky. A post-secondary credential, as I said earlier, just isn't a 4-year degree. It is a post-secondary credential. It could be a 30-hour certificate, could be a 1-year certificate, could be a 2-year associate degree or associate of applied arts. It could be a 4-year degree, it could be a doctorate, it could be a law degree. But we believe that all of them matters. And we believe that we have to somehow dedicate ourselves to making it matter more. And that we've got to quit just talking about it, but we've got to somehow bring ourselves together and forget our silos and figure out how we can come together with this conversation that says that Kentucky will grow if, in fact, we concentrate on the solution. This is how we're going. We're on trajectory. But unless something dramatically happens, we're going to go the other way. So I like to operate from a point of strength. My argument is that we have spent years now cutting to the bone, but our campuses are now at the bone. They're way into the bone. So it's now time for us to look at, if you want us to keep pulling this out, then help us with funding as well as with some direction even. So what do we want you to talk to us about? Well, we want to hear from you. This is a listening tour. From this point on, I will hear you. I will listen. Mom always said, boy, you got 2 ears and 1 mouth. Listen twice more than you speak. Right, Irma? Yeah. I didn't listen to Mama very well, but today I will try. Here we go. We got people recording. Are students prepared today coming to us in post-secondary? Young lady, you shook your head. Stand up and tell us who you are. I'm an old professor. I see these things, you know. Yeah, come on, stand up. Tell us who you are. Hi, Jessica. Why? Tell us, are you a student? Yes. Why do you believe we're not prepared? And we want to hear from you. Students should have a voice, right? We want to hear from you. Come on, Jessica, you're not shy. Stand up.
I really am shy.
Yeah.
I don't think we're prepared because high school, I wasn't prepared. I was not
Yeah. Okay, young lady, tell us who you are. Yeah.
That I wasn't necessarily prepared for college. I just feel like it's some things I wish I would have known or that I would have prepared for while I was in high school to make sure that I was ready for college. Like there's certain, I couldn't necessarily pinpoint it right now because of course it's not on my mind because I'm worried about getting the semester over with, but.
Your professors won't hold this against you, right, professors, Mr. Provost? Right, you're not holding that. Well, go ahead.
I just feel like as far as like saving money, as far as like preparing for internships and stuff. But I feel like in college it's worked on a little bit, but now that it's being brought up in college, I feel like we're not really as focused on it because it wasn't brought to our attention before that it was important. So now it's going to take over this 4 years for some of us to understand the important things that we need because it wasn't at least brought to our attention in high school.
Good job. Yes, who are you?
Hi, I'm Jalen Barnett. I'm a transfer student here. I believe that the things that are taught in high school, along the lines of history and our mathematics and things we need, but I think it should be more of a focus on financial literacy, also going off what you said. There's a lot of things as students that we don't know, simple things, writing checks, budgeting, balancing your checkbooks and things like that. They're very important to know as we grow older, and I feel like it's lacked in high school, as well as just college readiness, being prepared to dress the part. That's super important, and preparing a resume. When you get here, you need that. That's very vital. So it has to start in high school. It has to start younger. You should always be prepared before we get here, before you to be in the setting. So that's what I
Any more students want to jump into this conversation? I will tell you, we've heard exactly the same things from around the state. In eastern Kentucky, far western Kentucky, west Kentucky, southern Kentucky, they've all said exactly the same thing, folks. Right? Who else? What about some of you professors and other folk here? You want to jump into this conversation?
Hi, good to see you, Aaron.
Good to see you.
Yeah, students, there's something I would like to say to you, and that's when you come to college, please turn in your homework. I can, if you want to pass your classes, you got to do the work and you got to turn in your homework. And I can show anybody who would care to look my grade books, and the students who struggle the most in our university are the students who just don't turn in the work. So you have to learn a work ethic to come to college. So please, turn in your homework in high school.
Miss Molino, Dr. Molino, I'm sorry, I didn't know.
Use the mic. Use the mic.
Oh, I need it, okay. So I feel like, okay, turning in homework is okay, but I'm not even gonna lie, as a college student, my second semester, I'm struggling with turning work because like you said, students are dealing with the reality of affordability because they have certain situations going on at home. And I feel like some professors, and they're mad because their evaluations is bad because they don't want to understand the reasons why students have their other issues, because personal issues affect school. And I'm a victim of that, and we can go all day about it. But professors, I feel like some professors don't want to understand, and they're so focusing on turning in the work, but still yet like my mother, I live in a single mother home, so, she can't afford everything. And when I get a phone call, if I hear something that's not happy, I'm not going to want to do no homework. I'm going to want to focus on home because that's where I'm from.
Well, it's fair to say, and this is really not, we're really trying to find out information how we can change the way we're doing business around affordability, around teaching, around a variety of things, to be able to understand how we put our best foot forward to accomplish these goals that we're talking about. Yes, Dr. Harris.
As a former P12 person, as I reflect back on high school itself, I think that's probably, if Rip Van Winkle was to wake up today, that's the one thing he would recognize, is our high schools. And until we think differently about what that looks like, how we structure it, and what we expect students to do in that 6-hour day, I'm not sure that we will get all of the students, especially those students that we've been talking about when we talk about affordability and if they're prepared for the college level work, if we're going to get them there. Because most students, a lot of the students, I should say, in the high schools that I've been in, there's no relevance. It's not meaningful. They don't see what they're doing in high school and how it's going to transfer into college work. So I think we've got to think as adults, and those of us who are in the policy making, we've got to think differently about how we do high school if we expect our students to be prepared for college level work.
Yeah, and one of the things we heard, an excellent point, by the way, because we've heard this over and over again from students, that there is and I just heard that from a student, there is a disconnect between what's going on in P12 and when they get to college. And that's on us, right? So the idea is not just about academic, it's also about being prepared for all the other things in college that goes beyond academics. I know you guys know this already. When we look at people who fail academically, we can trace the majority of that back to not whether or not they have the ability to perform the work, but all the things that happened to them that made them not do the work, right? So there are a lot of things that we're called to do that goes to exactly your point, I think. Yes?
Can I go back a little further to elementary?
Yes.
I have 2 children that went to high school in Cincinnati. And my daughter went to college at Eastern. and has a degree in elementary ed. She has 2 sons who are in elementary school, and she's done a great job with them. She had them both reading before kindergarten, but has been told by teachers that she needs to slow those kids down. They're too far ahead of the rest of the class. And the other thing she sees the mentality of is where she went to high school, it was when you go to college, and here it is if you go.
Right.
And
Tell us who you are, by the way.
I work in accounting here.
Hi. What's your name?
Lisa Fitzwater.
Good to meet you, Lisa. Let me just tell you something. This is clearly not about us pointing our fingers to K-12, P-12. That's not what I'm doing at all. It's about figuring out how we can together create a system that matters, right? And a good example, I have to tell you this, just an anecdotal example. When I was young, my mother taught me how to write my name in cursive when I was 4 years old. When I entered elementary school, they made me stop to learn how to print so I could learn how to write my name in cursive. So, you know, there are things that we sometimes do to take the creativity out of children, right? So you'll hear me argue all the time, the best way to create a good higher ed system is to have a great early childhood system and a great P-12. So this is not about us pointing fingers, but looking for directions that gives us information. Any other item on this question? Yes, hi. Tell us who you are.
I'm Dr. Wright. I'm faculty here.
How are you?
School of Nursing. I can kind of see both sides of it, just listening to the whole conversation. I do have a son that's a junior at Eastern Kentucky University. I have every piece of this gray hair from my son going to Eastern Kentucky University. And I see it both sides. I agree with you. You have to have a strong support system at home, and you have to be able to push them and encourage them, and things do happen at home. I do understand that with the students that we work with at the School of Nursing. I just encourage them to be open and honest, and so we can work on it together. It's not going to change overnight, but I feel like that just being here since January, the school wants to see these students thrive.
Yeah.
And what we can do, we can't change that they're now here. So we just need to kind of connect the dots from middle school, high school, and then on to college. Because I agree, my son was not prepared for college, and he's a junior now. And if I get him through there, you will know about it. I promise you.
Well, I've got this gray hair too from doing similar things. I will tell you, wherever we get them, we got them, right? And how to deal with it. We know that we have to develop good support systems and a good academic rigorous system with high inputs in higher education with high expectations from our faculty to make it happen. So it's not just looking at, well, if you get us better prepared students, then we'll do better here, right? I mean, wouldn't it be great if that was the system set up? But that's not. What is the system we need to develop? How do we make us all good at all of these different pieces throughout the educational pipeline? Yes?
Yes, I'm Dr. Higgins from the School of Education, and I think one of the things that is really great to do is have that collaboration with the P through 12 and get our students out there as much as possible. And the more they're there, I think the better prepared they can be to come back to the university to prepare everybody, because that's what it's all about, working together. Because Henry Ford once said, coming together is the beginning, but working together is progress. So I just wanted to make a statement on that.
Well, thank you. I had one question back here, then here. Yes?
All right, Dr. Thompson, Dr. Ken Andrews, College of Ag, Communities and Environment. Good to see you back here.
Good to see you, young man.
On this question here, what I'd like to say is have a number of students come through my class, of course, and as you're asking this, you know, I believe every professor in here, everybody who works with these students would agree that we have students come into our classes who are very well prepared, some possibly even maybe over-prepared a little bit, and we have students who are vastly underprepared. So when our struggle that I face all the time that I keep seeing is with that diversity in preparedness in our class, trying to make sure that we get the work ethic in there, we get everything turned in, and we can struggling to bring those students who are struggling in our class, who were not prepared in basic grammar, basic mathematic procedures, and ready to do college work at that level, as indicated by their writing assignments and things, up to where they need to be, while not losing those students who were very well prepared that are coming into class, just like I'm sure the K-12 people are facing as well, with that same diversity in their classroom on that learning level. So that's just what I wanted to say. Like I said, on average, I see a lot of students come through that are not well prepared, but that could just be because those are the ones that usually stick in our mind the most.
I think it's important to understand that good education will do three things. One is that maybe four things. We move to a learning paradigm instead of a teaching paradigm. It's not about me, even though I think I'm a great teacher, right? It's not about me. It's about whether or not the student learns. And the way that that happens through high expectations, high rigor, but also high input. And that's what equity is. Not everybody will come equal to the game. So our job, whether it's in P12 or higher ed, is to take students from where they're at, and that is what cultural competence is, by the way. Take them from where they're at and get them to where they need to be successful. And if we leave people behind, then we've got an issue. So I appreciate your statements. What we don't want to do, also, to take students that are quote unquote more prepared and somehow make them less when they leave us. I mean, it is about taking everybody up. So one more before I go to the next question. So you guys are all energetic. I like this. Yes.
Yes, sir. My name is Dr. John Gregory, and I have a specific question. I'm brand new to higher ed. I just retired from the Army. So I hear a lot of content and talk about systems and policy. For me, for context, what is the current system, and what are the things that are going on now currently that raise these type of questions that we're talking about now? So I can have some personal context so I can be better at doing what I've been charged to do here at KSU.
Well, there's no way I'm going to give you justice to this question here, not because I don't know the answer, but it's one of those things where we need to have several days to actually talk about the answer. What I will tell you, though, the big things that I see with the system, that yes, when many students come to us, our early childhood system could be stronger in many ways, right? With as much input as we possibly can from parents and family members and others that we don't have for a variety of reasons. And we got a lot of, I won't go in great detail, but a lot of influential variables there, whether we talk about the opioid crisis, all that other stuff, right? That's one thing. The second thing is that we do have transitions issues. Many of our students can't read at the level they need to by third grade, which is a marker, or they can't perform the task that they need to perform, and then it just perpetuates itself all the way through. So now we have students that are graduating in many cases, and I think Dr. Lewis will attest to this. Many are graduating from his system, and many they're not post-secondary ready. So we get them in many cases, and we haven't done the things we need to do in higher education to help them to be post-secondary ready, to make them successful, so we lose them. So what we have is a perpetuation of what I argue is our most devastating process, that those that are probably, everybody needs a good higher ed degree, right? Everybody does. But those that may need it the most, we're leaving behind. Those that we're needing the most, we are not developing nearly at the level that we need to change generational statuses. So along the way, there's a lot of stuff that we can argue that we need. Funding would be one of them, you know, a better teacher prep program would be another. I could keep on going forever with it. So a part of what we're called to do is to look at those gaps, not just the achievement gaps, but the opportunity gaps. What are we missing? What do we need to input at that point in time? Part of it is that I know of no one going to get a post-secondary credential that doesn't want a good job. But we've kind of left employers out of the loop here. And employers have actually complained and not done a very good job putting themselves in the loop. So there's a lot of different pieces that we're called to do. Post-secondary, in the past, we blamed P12. P12 blamed parents. So the argument is, how do we quit blaming people and come up with a solution to tie ourselves together to look at those opportunity gaps and what we can do with the resources that we have to make sure we fill them. I mean, once again, there are a lot of answers to your question, and I'm happy if you ever want to set up a time and buy me a beverage, and I'll talk to you about it more in detail. Yes. Okay, one more answer. I said one more before, but everybody's just raising their hands. Yeah, I like it.
I'm sorry. Okay, so I'm back. But also, I feel like it has to do with exposure. As a student, I know I was fortunate enough to have high school teachers that cared, and just to all the professors and teachers, we appreciate you. But I had teachers that cared that really, I'm majoring in business right now, so I was able to go to on-site jobs to see, and this is back in high school, so I was able to be part of Junior Achievement, if anybody's familiar with that, but Junior Achievement Finance Park, I was able to do that. So it's a lot about exposure as well. Things that my mother knew, things that my parents knew, but in the time I spent in high school, those are the teachers, those are the people that are influencing me, and the things that I know. And those things stuck with me, real life world things stuck with me more than the teaching me about history, or even though it's important, but teaching me about history and the social studies and things of that nature. So I think it's about exposure as well, and meeting the level of expectation that your teachers have for you. I think it's important that teachers set expectations for students of every background, every generation, even if students didn't go to, your students' parents didn't go to college. So I feel like a level of expectation and just teachers that want you and motivate you to go to college and get that post-secondary education.
Well, I appreciate this coming from a student. Don't let that be the last word on this question, because they keep giving me whatever sign that I normally don't pay attention to, and I've only got the one question yet. So how can we increase the number of high school graduates going on to college? What can we do? What can we do? Yes. Hi.
No, 15 years. And, no, not 15 years. But anyway, I worked in financial aid for a long time. And one of the things that we did, I've worked at a state school in financial aid, and I've worked for a for-profit. And one of the things we did as a for-profit was we met with every single family. And we discussed all the options for financial aid. And we would go to the high schools and have financial aid nights and get them to fill out their FAFSAs. I think a lot of times the cost is the struggle. So if you put more information out there, go to the schools, go to the students, I think that makes a huge difference. Even just explaining something like, this is all of the free money, and even though these are loans, this is a loan that's an investment in yourself. So it's not just about, having this debt, but you're investing in yourself. So you may have to take out a loan, and that's okay. So I think just putting more information out there and going to the families and the students is important.
I think it's important you got Ted and Jean here that I'm sure is anxious to hear this too. We've got to, and I think we'll do a fairly good job, but this is an area that we need to do a much better job, right? No doubt about it. And this, once again, is working together to make it happen. Yes, sir.
Chris Cribbs, here at Extension. One of the things, I have a daughter, she's a rising senior at University of Louisville, and in regards to your question, I know the state of Tennessee has a program called Tennessee Promise, and the University of Tennessee system has announced that basically they will cover tuition and fees for students with a household income of less than $50,000.
Yeah.
So my recommendation was, or will be, to the state of Kentucky to take a look at programs like that and see, can we mimic them or best them?
Well, it's interesting that you bring this up, because we just had a meeting on this. Did you all know we have a Kentucky Promise just like Tennessee Promise? It's called the Work Ready Scholarship. So there is free college in Kentucky for these big 5 sector areas, and my staff who knows. David, how many programs does this cover? And I know, but Gene can tell me how many programs right now. Hundreds of programs. So we have a Kentucky Promise, and we haven't done a very good job of letting people know. And we have institutions in the state of Kentucky, if you fit into that, will actually give you a break the same way as Tennessee. This is where Tennessee we haven't done a very good job of communicating this, so you have no idea how much I appreciate you saying that, because this goes to exactly the kind of conversation that we need to hear. We need to get this information out because it is there. Now, do I think we need to do more? No doubt about it, because these guys run out of CAP grants, way before many of our more needy students can get it. So there needs to be more money in student financial aid, no doubt about it. But we do have a Kentucky Promise. Yes, I saw a hand. Yes.
How you doing? Cara Gilbo, Dean of Students. I think it's really about increasing pipeline partnerships. I think definitely having a presence within the high schools is so important first, but also making our students understand there's so many different ways to get a college education. I was a community college graduate before I went on to get a bachelor's and a master's, and now working on a PhD. And one thing that I learned at the community college was I didn't have to stop there. And it was because they had colleges that came to my campus that I was at that made their presence known to say, hey, you don't have to stop at this associate's degree. You could go on and move forward to a bachelor's and so forth and so on. And I think it's so important about presence for our students, because if you look at some of the high schools around the country, and even here in Kentucky State, we are creating these opportunities within the high school for them to graduate with associate's degrees. But why limit them there? So I think it's important for us to continue to put those types of programs in the high schools, but remember to continue to create those pipeline partnerships that allow students to realize that even though you are workforce ready, you can continue your education even after that, and making sure that we're making education affordable across the board.
Absolutely. It's the pathways and the pipelines. We do need to have better advising. We need to have a better variety of things. I saw a hand back here first, then you, sir. Yes.
This is Avinash Tope from College of Agriculture, Communities and the Environment.
Good to see you.
This question pertains to, or this is suggestion more than a question, or pertains to financial education on the part of the parents. Almost every state has the 529 plan that is supporting all the expenses that you can save toward college. Kentucky does not give any state level incentives or tax breaks. There are quite a few parents who are proactive in opening up a 529 plan, but that does not necessarily receive any financial break or a tax break. As part of CPE or part of the higher education group, what would it take for making that kind of a change? And it doesn't take much. You can start a plan with just $1 a month from a family. Every dollar matters. And when we apply the compounding interest formula, it's a win-win. But there is no incentive here for Kentuckians in terms of tax breaks on that aspect. Any thoughts?
Well, I appreciate that. What do we have?
Well, we have a 529 plan, but the gentleman is correct. There is no tax. Basically, the way most states do it is to offer an income reduction for contributions to 529. Range from 2,500 is typical, 10,000 in some states. The challenge is how do you pay for it? We have a few other challenges here in the Commonwealth, starting with the pension system that's dominated discussion about finance. We have it on the list.
It is on the list, but I wanted the head of KIA to bring that to you. And I know I'm going to run out. I know people want it, but I want to get these others in. How well are we preparing students to get into the workplace? Are we doing a good job? How are you, sir?
Oh, good. Thank you, Dr. Thompson, for listening. David Neville, 1985 graduate in marketing. And I had a little bit on that last slide, but I'll
No, you can talk about anything you want to talk about, David. You always do.
Yes.
You know?
Thank you for that appreciation, sir. So how do we connect with students in high school? First, I learned a long time ago in sales and marketing that you have to make a connection or build a relationship with folks. If you do, you can sell them anything you want to. I would challenge not only this university and CPE, but others as well, to go, let's just start with our high schools. There's 11 high schools in our service county areas, right? Franklin and surrounding areas. Let's challenge folks to go to those high schools and develop one-on-one relationships. And in some cases, Kentucky State University has done a good job with that. Ken Bates out of aquaculture in Russellville High School, for instance, right? But we don't have those relationships, and I would challenge anybody, if they'll run around with me for about a week, we can prove that out. So build those relationships, number one. Number two is understand that there are kids that carry their own money. Why are we not really aggressively, assertively talking to those kids, right? And they're just not high school kids, but they also might be veterans, or they might be other groups that carry their own money, right? Are we preparing for success in the workplace? I had a call from, switching gears a little bit, I had a call from Metro Works out of Louisville, right? The mayor's team, Louisville Forward. You have a relationship with Kentucky State University? I do. I'm not faculty or staff, just alumnus, right? So we need diverse employees. There's supposedly 30,000 skilled jobs in Louisville that are not being filled.
At least, yes.
At least. We have graduates. For instance, our valedictorian from last December finished college in 3 years. Valedictorian is not working in her field today. We have a computer, we talk about STEM and females in STEM. We have a computer science graduate that graduated in December 2017 that is not working in her field today. So I don't think we are preparing students for success in the workplace.
Yeah, well, one of the things, I'll let anybody jump in here. Everybody tell my time's out, but you can tell I'll listen well. But the idea that this is why we've got to get employers into this conversation with us, right? Because even if our students are prepared, I had a chance to, one student who graduated this past December got me on this subject, so some of you know I've been going around the state asking this question: what would it be for those that graduated, do you wish you had? And sure as my name's what it is, out of about 10 students I talked to, 4 of the students said exactly the same thing. I wish I had a course in my senior year or something that told me what I could do with what I got, right? You know, and that has taken me to heart. So I see my Vice President for Academic Affairs, I announced in a meeting the other day, we're going to transform general education, where we're going to take that into consideration. Because that is such a clear example of a gap, opportunity that we should have filled in the past that we just missed. So no doubt. Yes?
All right, I'm Chad Tillman. I'm the resident life. I think that we are preparing our students for grades, but not actually success. So our employers, you know, they're looking for the bottom line, simply. Can you make me money or can you save me money? And we're just looking them not so much for a grade, but for actual progress.
Well, thank you. That's actually a great statement. Yes?
Yes, and it kind of goes back to the previous question as well. You were talking about how do we prepare kids for success out of college. We're also talking about trade schools and things of this nature. As we begin to prepare people, we need to have that collaboration with those companies. What are you needing? What are you looking for? Are you willing to sink money into our education system and turn these students into employees?
Sure. I think we leave a lot of money on the table from employers who are willing to engage with us, that have money to engage with us. We just haven't asked for it. So I agree with you. There's beneficial ways of doing it, but there's also benefits from doing it. Good point. Okay. Yes.
I'm Kyla. I think it should be like a mandatory mentoring somebody. Like, I have a mentor that's in my field because I want to be an engineer. So I'm in STEM, and I do have somebody that I mentor and actually talk to that can help me in my career that I want to go to. So I think for graduates, I think a class of having one mentor or multiple mentors should be mandatory because it will help them get into their field because they know somebody in their field.
Yeah, she makes an excellent point, and I wish I had more time to go into this, but research showing that upward of 20% plus either peer, near peer, or professional mentors increases the likelihood, 20% plus, likelihood of success for a particular student. So I really appreciate you bringing that into it because it is important that we figure out how to build that kind of community of mentors. And by the way, those that become mentors also have a greater success rate, not only in school, but in life. Okay, one last question here before I get my statement, before I get my last question in, and then that hand that was raised, I'll give you an opportunity to speak. Yes.
Michael Weaver. Hey, Doc.
Which is one of my mentees, right? Look at it.
I think a better question is how well are we preparing our students to be our own boss? I think that college prepares us to settle for less than our potential. I think a lot of us have great ideas and are full of ideas that will change the world, but instead of pursuing those ideas and our passions, we are taught to settle and go and work for someone else who can make us some money, but we could probably make more money if we actually follow our dreams and our passion.
I appreciate that statement. You know, how much are we actually motivating you or inspiring you to be motivated enough to use your creativity, right? Because many of you that are young in this room, you're probably going to create, a field of work. You're probably going to create the place where you're going to be employed. So how well are we helping you to do that? Y'all can answer any question you want to for the rest of the time, but I want someone to tell me, what are the barriers? What can we do to help people to understand how to get back in college, those that are out? How can we help people to get through? What kind of barriers do we have to help them to get through? And so on. So back in the back. Hi.
Dr. Joanne Banks, and I really had something to say about preparing students
You
and
can
working
still
for the
say
jobs.
it.
But
Yeah.
going back to this has been on my mind. This particular question has also been on my mind because we have many people who are have become unemployed or they are underemployed. People are really angry because they're not making a living wage that will help them support their families. And so some of them probably need to go back to college, or they need to get some skill set. Now, to do this, when you have a family and you have children and you've got other things, I know a lot of our students in here may have that, but there's got to be a way that it makes it easier for them to go to college and to be able to afford it. So as much as I might not really like the online thing, but that's why we're losing a lot of people to online, because they could do it in your home, and you might have to come to campus or whatever, but we probably have to find ways that we can engage more adults and also help them to get a better skill set.
Yeah, we do need better multiple delivery systems for our work, no doubt about it, and we are working on that. Now I'm going to give you a last opportunity to say anything you want to say about anything you want to say about it. Yes.
Dr. Thompson, a comment that I'd have on this as well as a previous slide, and I think this is something that we here at Kentucky State University are working on, and I think every university is trying to work on. We've got to find new ways to deliver the information and to evaluate if we're going to have students be able to succeed and we're going to bring these adults back in. Whether that's online, hybrid classes, because personally I don't believe we can teach everything properly online, because there's some things you have to have your hands on to really know and understand, and that's hard to do online. One other thing that I would like to ask you, or maybe try to get a comment on, especially since you mentioned P20 education, that goes beyond high school, goes beyond into the graduate program, postgraduate education. Where do you see the future of postgraduate education, graduate schools going in the state, and how do we help bring them into the area that you're working on here to make them more affordable more applicable, more work ready in those regards as well?
Excellent question. First of all, we cannot have a good higher ed system, once again, without good R&D, research and development. That comes from our postgraduate folk. Now, without a doubt, they need to get undergraduates engaged with them, students, to do that. What I do see, though, is when there's a lack of funding that's coming from the feds, when there's a lack of funding that's not focused from foundations in this area as much anymore, and when I see a lack of funding coming from the state, we are now propping up much of our graduate degrees on the dollars we get from undergraduate education. We can't keep doing that in the way we've been doing it. So we've got to figure out how to build a system of good postgraduate degrees that matter. The Bucks for Brains, for an example, is one thing that really worked in Kentucky. We probably haven't told the staff this or our presidents yet, but we're probably going to look at asking for that again. So we've got to figure out some way of feeding what we still really need. We sometimes can get so lost, and there's nothing wrong with fulfilling these middle-skill jobs that we need to fill, that we get lost in understanding that we need to have a strong baccalaureate graduating group and a strong post-baccalaureate group graduating to make that happen. We need you all in the land-grant area to develop what you're developing that helps our state do what they need to do. You all have had a much better relationship here, as an example, with people that use your product than we have in our other fields. So what we're seeing now, like this happening with some of the stuff in Western Kentucky, we're seeing them work closely, those R&D people, working closely with our universities in these areas more than ever. And we're also seeing that these folks are investing in the graduate education, these employers. So somehow we've got to cultivate that too. I will tell you, from my vantage point, there's no way that I'm going to, at least while I'm in office, let what we're doing in the post-baccalaureate level go to waste. And I'm going to actually highlight it very much as I do everything else, because we don't get where we need to go without that strong R&D system, as I said earlier. So thank you. Any last question? Any last statement? Yes. Our new city council person, hi.
Well, first, I believe in pre-K. I'm working in our public school systems here in the pre-K hallway, actually, in our public school systems. And one thing that I get is there's a lot that our teachers are required to do. They're required to teach. They're required to be behavioralists. They're required to do so much. I mean, I see children every day throw temper tantrums in class, 15 minutes, and she's waiting for him to calm down so she can continue to teach. And that's affecting the other classes as they're integrating people that may have ADHD or what have you, and it really is affecting the school system, and it's allowing them to sit 15 minutes without teach time in there, just controlling one child. And I know they just passed and saying that every 250 students needs a counselor, which I still think that's quite a few students for one counselor, depending on funding, correct? And so you're also looking at one counselor as a behavioral counselor, also as a college counselor, and I think that should be two different people to be able to concentrate. Onto the higher education level, I also, as a graduate of Kentucky State and coming into college, basically on my own from foster care, I didn't really know the finance as some have shared. And when I took out loans, it was just like, oh, it was payday. You go buy shoes. You've not been given that financial savviness in high school to prepare for that. So how can we set a policy or regulations to only allow maybe 5% or 10% of those loans over what that child really needs? Because it's really setting our children up for failure. It's setting them up for failure in financial, and it's also keeping them from going on to the next level because they spent the extra money that could pay for a graduate degree for Jordans, shoes, and a Gucci purse that they do not need. How do we set policy for that?
There's several kinds of policies we can set. We're working with the U.S. Department of Education now and the House and Senate, especially Senate, in the higher ed reform reauthorization, to look at how we can better use not just student financial aid, but how we better inform. And we can do a much better job that we can set policy in the state that talks to our students before they get a loan that says, this is the way you need to use it. If you borrow it for this, you spend it for this, this will be the outcome. If you borrow it here and go for this major and get this degree, this is what you need to borrow at the maximum, and so on. So we can do a lot of that in state. But I know we are running out of time. People will keep telling me. One last statement. I got two people with microphones. Quickly, I'm going to leave. Quickly, last statements, then we're done, right?
My question is 15.
Oh, you're asking me a question. No, go ahead. No, I'm joking.
15, 20 years ago, I recall that the state of Kentucky and many other businesses would give incentives for adults to go back to college. I remember our parking lots were full from 5 o'clock till 8 o'clock every night. I think that has affected, and that is a barrier to a lot of adults coming back to school.
First of all, we have the Work Ready Scholarship again, and we're working with employers to provide incentives, but we're also looking and working with our campuses to do exactly that again, because it is going to take something like that to get these folks re-engaged. Unless they do get re-engaged, we can't accomplish what we need to accomplish. Michael, you have the last word, and I'm saying goodbye to you guys.
Really quick. Since we are at HBCU, I do want to touch on the topic of minorities in higher education. I think that we need to start diversifying and encouraging African American students to go into education. One of the reasons why we don't see a lot of minorities or African Americans in post-secondary education is because they didn't see someone in the classroom who looked like them to encourage them to go on to get that post-secondary degree. And so not only in the K through 12 arena, but also in the higher ed arena as well, we need to start seeing people who look like us, who can relate to us, who can really help us and push us to be great.
Amen, brother. I mean, I will tell you this, we are concentrating on, we have to double down, triple down. And it needs to be throughout all of our campuses, and that's exactly, we are creating a process of doing exactly that, because there's no way that I believe that we can talk about equity and justice if we haven't done a better job of getting people from all walks into our classrooms. So I hear you. Thank you. Y'all are a great audience. I love you to death. Have a great one. Thank you so much.